In Module 4, we are discussing family issues and concerns of family members of residents with Alzheimer's, the grief process and how it relates to the multiple ongoing losses associated with Alzheimer's disease, and strategies for assisting family members to be involved with residents. When a family member is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease or other dementia, the effect on the entire family can be overwhelming. The diagnosis can trigger a range of emotions, including anger, fear, frustration, and sadness. There are also many decisions to make about treatment, care, living arrangement, finances, and end-of-life care. And as a result, family conflicts are common. Each family, of course, also has its own history of relationships, roles, and challenges that can affect how individuals react to a diagnosis and how members see their roles in providing care. But there are strategies that can be considered that promote cooperation to lessen some family conflicts. For example, it's important to make a list of current and anticipated roles and responsibilities. It's unlikely that caregiving will be divided evenly, but a thorough list will help families consider roles that match each family member's preferences, resources, abilities, and emotional capacity. Some might provide hands-on care or make arrangements for the family member to move in with them. Others might be responsible for respite care, household chores, or errands. A family might designate someone to handle financial or legal issues, and one person might research care facilities, which will probably be needed in the future. Also, it's important to meet regularly, holding family meetings to discuss care and other relevant issues. And by meeting regularly, such as monthly, families can address a few concerns at a time, avoid burnout with long meetings, and be more prepared for any changes in care. These can be done in person or via phone or video conference. Invite everybody who's part of the caregiving team, including family, friends, and other close contacts. When appropriate, such as with concerns about in-home care, include the family member with dementia. If disagreements cannot be resolved, maybe a family will need a social worker or a clergy member to help facilitate the meetings. Encourage families to create an agenda and share it before they meet, making it clear that the goal of the meeting is to evaluate cares and needs, identify problems, and consider solutions. And they need to be open to compromise and possibilities that hadn't been considered. Also, encourage families to end meetings with a clear understanding of what it has been agreed upon, what each person has agreed to do, and what needs to be addressed in the future. Someone also might create a summary of the meeting or an audio recording for family members who can't attend. And it's important to communicate honestly, to talk about feelings in an open, constructive manner during family meetings or even informal conversations. So if somebody is stressed or angry, it's important to say so. Also, it's important to express feelings without blaming or shaming anyone else by using I statements. For example, a person might say, "I'm feeling overwhelmed with juggling my own schedule and dad's appointments," rather than, "You don't understand what it's like to manage dad's schedule." And it's important to listen to other families' meetings too. Also, don't criticize. There are many right ways to provide care. Respect each caregiver's abilities, style, and values, and be especially supportive of family members responsible for daily hands-on care. Counseling should also be considered, even with effective communication and cooperation among family members. They may need help resolving conflicts or coping with stress. It could be suggested to join a support group for dementia caregivers, seek family counseling, or ask for advice from the medical care team. Working through conflicts helps families move on to more important things, caring for the family member and enjoying time together. It is common for caregivers to have feelings of loss and grief as their life is changed by Alzheimer's. They are entitled to these emotions and may start to experience them as soon as they learn of the diagnosis. They also need to share feelings and seek support as they go through the process. Alzheimer's gradually takes away the person they know and love. And as this happens, they will mourn him or her and may experience the different phases of grieving: denial, anger, guilt, sadness, and finally acceptance. The stages of grief don't happen neatly in order, and they may move in and out of the different stages as time goes on. Some common experiences in the grieving process include denial. This would be denying that the person has Alzheimer's or hoping that they're not ill, expecting the person to get better, or convincing oneself that the person has not changed, and attempting to normalize problematic behaviors. The next step of the grieving process is anger. They may feel frustrated with the person. They may resent the demands of caregiving. They may resent family members who cannot or will not help provide care, and they may feel abandoned. There's also guilt, having unrealistic expectations with thoughts like, I should have done, or I must do everything for him or her, or I must visit him or her every day in the long-term care facility. They may feel bad because they're still able to enjoy life, feeling that they maybe have failed or they cannot care for the person at home, having negative thoughts about the person or wishing that he or she would go away and die, regretting things about the relationship before the diagnosis. The next stage is sadness. It can be feeling overwhelmed by loss, crying frequently, withdrawing from social activities or needing to connect more frequently with others, withholding emotions or displaying them more openly than usual. And the final step in the grieving process is acceptance. Finally, they learn to live in the moment. They find personal meaning in caring for somebody who is terminally ill. They understand how the grieving process affects their lives, and they appreciate the personal growth that comes from surviving loss. Finding their sense of humor also can help, and asking for and accepting help from others. Now, right now, I do want to talk to the family members because there are ways to cope with grief and loss. It's important to face feelings. Think about all of your feelings, positive and negative. Let yourself be as sad as you want and accept feelings of guilt because they are normal. Work through anger and frustration. These are healthy emotions, and know that it is common to feel conflicting emotions. It's okay to feel love and anger at the same time. And you need to prepare to experience feelings of loss more than once. As dementia progresses, it is common to go through feelings of grief and loss again. Accept and acknowledge those feelings. They are a part of the grieving process. It's also important to claim the grieving process as your own. No people experience grief in the same way. It hits people at different times, and some people need more time to grieve than others. Your experience will depend on the severity and the duration of the person's illness, on your own history of loss, and on the nature of your relationship with the person who has Alzheimer's. Understand that everyone grieves differently and at their own pace. If your grief is so intense that your well-being is at risk, ask for help from your doctor or a professional counselor. It really helps to talk with somebody. Talk with somebody that you can trust about your grief, about your guilt, and about your anger. And if you decide to meet with a therapist who specializes in grief counseling, interview several so that you can choose one that you're comfortable with. Combat those feelings of isolation and loneliness. Caregivers often give up enjoyable activities and companionship. Make a lunch or a movie date with friends. Take a break that may help you relieve stress and grief and strengthen your support network. Stay involved in activities that you enjoy. And finally, join a support group. When you talk with other caregivers, share your emotions, cry, and laugh together. Do not limit conversations to caregiving tips. The Alzheimer's Association has support groups that take place all over the country, and it would be good to find one near you. And know that some people may not understand your grief. A lot of things that people go through, nobody understands them unless they themselves has gone through it. Most people think grief happens when somebody dies. They may not know that it is possible to grieve deeply for someone who has a progressive cognitive illness. Also, accept yourself. Think about what you expect from yourself. Is it realistic? Learn to accept the things that are beyond your control. Make responsible decisions about the things you can control. And finally, take care of yourself. The best thing you can do for the person that you are caring for is to stay healthy. This includes taking care of your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Create balance in your life. Do things that bring joy and comfort. And give yourself time to rest. Ask for help when you need it, and accept the help that is offered. Usually in advanced Alzheimer's or late stage Alzheimer's is when families are faced with a challenge of whether to place their parent or their loved one in a nursing home or a long-term care facility. It's very difficult knowing that a mom or a dad needs a high level of round-the-clock care, something which they might not be able to provide on their own. And it often comes with conflicted emotions like guilt, regret, and even a sense of relief. As healthcare workers, we need to be sensitive to this as families are faced with this common challenge. That's why we're going to talk about strategies for assisting family members to be involved with the care of residents. Now, these family members have a strong investment in the care and health of their loved one, and it's important to listen to their concerns and work with them to develop an individualized plan of care. Families play a very important role in the quality of care and quality of life of loved ones in long-term care. Among nursing home residents, family involvement has been associated with better psychological and psychosocial well-being and a higher provision of certain types of treatment. Also, higher life satisfaction has been reported for residential care and assisted living residents who receive regular visits from family. The quality of the social environment is important to resident satisfaction and feeling at home. It's when the burden of care becomes too much is what mostly leads to nursing home placement. But the family needs to understand that they can still be significantly involved in caregiving for their loved one. It's important to remember the role of the family member is to always communicate to the nursing home staff a loved one's needs and preferences. And these needs and wishes should always be respected. So let's go to initial family engagement. And the first part of this would be the resident assessment. The assessment is key to understanding what each resident needs to maintain physical, mental, and social function in a nursing home. Remember that the resident must have a comprehensive assessment within 14 days of admission to a long-term care facility, and at least once a year after that, or anytime there is any significant change in the resident's condition. Resident assessment reviews are completed quarterly, and the assessment is used to gather information about the health and physical condition of a resident and also examines his or her habits, activities, and relationships. During this resident assessment, the family can introduce the nursing home staff to their loved one. And this is one of the most important things that can be done. So use the resident assessment to communicate personal habits and, most importantly, to allow the family to share their loved one's unique life story. Within 7 days of the initial comprehensive assessment, a care plan conference is held. At this conference, an individualized care plan is developed by an interdisciplinary team consisting of the attending physician, the nurse, nurse aide, activities, dietary staff, and social worker. It is important that the team have critical input from the resident and/or their family members. Residents and families should participate in all care planning conferences. All participants discuss the strategy for the resident's care in the care plan conference to ensure all medical and non-medical issues are addressed. Care plan review conferences are held quarterly or whenever there is a major change in a resident's condition to see if the care plan is working or if it needs to be updated. What is the purpose of the care plan? The care plan is a strategy for how staff will help a resident on a daily basis. The care plan clarifies what each staff person will do and when they will do it, and the care plan serves as a guide for the resident, family members, and staff to discuss the resident's progress. Visits from family members can be a very important support for a resident's emotional well-being and help assure their loved one receives quality care. Visits are also an important time to look for changes in a loved one's health and mental status. They should see progress towards meeting the goals in the care plan. Now, according to law, when and how can a family member visit a loved one? Under the Nursing Home Reform Law of 1987, residents have the right and the facility must provide for immediate access to any resident by immediate family or other relatives of the resident, subject to the resident's consent. The resident and family members have the right to decide what visits involved and when they take place. So here's some tips for families visiting a loved one. Encourage them to plan visits around what makes a loved one comfortable. For example, a family member may want to visit at bedtime to help their loved one fall asleep. Also, visiting at different times of the day and week to see the care the loved one receives at all times. Families can also keep a guest book in the loved one's room so that visitors and family members can communicate with one another. And it's always important to encourage families to participate in the activities that are offered for residents in the long-term care facility. For example, maybe there's going to be a hymn sing or crafts. My grandma, they used to take them to a farm every year or go to the park, and we would go with her. In moderate to late stage Alzheimer's, communication is often very limited. So instead of family members sitting there not really knowing what to say, encourage them to spend creative times doing things for a loved one that the long-term facility workers can't. There's so much limitation in time. So things like giving a manicure, a pedicure, doing their hair, taking them for walks outside, feeding them at meals. This is often a challenge for long-term care facility workers. Family members should always be encouraged to visit. When my grandma was in the nursing home, her grandchildren didn't visit her very often, and that made me sad. Yet I understand now that they probably thought that she couldn't even understand that they were there. Yet there is this emotional connection that every human needs, especially with family, and that is not lost just because someone has late-stage Alzheimer's. My grandmother always remembered my son, and her name for him was that little boy. Even she couldn't even remember her children's names or her grandchildren's names. She would always ask for that little boy. We would take her outside. We would go to feed the ducks. We would take her for walks on nice days in the park. My son loved going there because he would always find bags of chips hidden in her walker. He would sit on her walker and she would push him in the halls. Of course, it didn't always go as planned. Sometimes we would go and there was no way that we would wake her up. So I would try to plan a few other things in the area just in case, like going to the mall. Sometimes I would take her outside and she would be miserable. She would say, "It's too cold," or "The sun is in my eyes." And then we'd have to just wheel her back in and spend some time with her and say goodbye. The point is that all the family members should be encouraged to visit. And it doesn't matter whether the person is moderate or late stage Alzheimer's. There is an emotional connection that takes place when family members visit. Let's move on to family advocacy. Being an advocate for a loved one means knowing the importance of and participating in the resident assessment and care plan, knowing the nursing home staff and their roles, monitoring a loved one's care during regular visits, raising any concerns with staff, or if necessary, the regulatory agency. Family members are the primary advocate for their loved one. And when problems arise, how can a family member advocate effectively? Well, they should be encouraged to document and report concerns and problems to staff members directly involved as soon as they arise. If their actions yield no result, the concern can be reported to staff supervisors in writing and in a meeting. They also need to be assertive and confident, but always remaining respectful in interactions with staff. They should clearly state concerns and the outcome that is desired. Also, they can join with other residents' family members. This 1987 nursing home reform law guarantees families of nursing home residents the right to form and hold regular private meetings of an organized group called a family council. Joining or organizing a family council is one of the most effective ways to advocate, not just for a loved one, but for quality care for all residents in the nursing home. So what should you know about family councils? The facility must provide a meeting place and a designated staff person to act as a liaison between the group and the facility. Family councils also have the right to meet without staff present unless one is invited to allow family members to voice concerns without reservations. A family council has the right to take concerns and suggestions about resident care and life in the facility to staff, who must act upon the concerns and the suggestions and respond to them. Staff responsibility involves the entire team working together to create an environment in which every team member, including the residents and their family, can work as partners to improve healthcare quality and safety. Residents and family members are valuable members of the healthcare team who offer a unique perspective on the care provided in the facility. And by engaging residents and family members as partners, a facility is able to leverage the skills and knowledge of all the team members. One of the most important steps in facilitating family engagement is establishing trust and relationship. When you first meet a resident and family, introduce yourself by name and your role. Let them know how you are involved in the resident's plan of care. Ask how the resident and family member would prefer to be addressed, and allow time for the resident and family to ask questions. And lastly, I'm going to give you some miscellaneous tips about engaging families. Welcome and encourage family members to communicate with staff and the resident. Provide staff contact information when appropriate, including which person to contact when. Proactively initiate frequent communication with family members. And I will add here, ask family members how they would like you to communicate with them. Would it be through email? Would it be through a telephone call or a text or a meeting? And discuss all aspects of resident care and life. Create two-way communications, sharing with family and listening to their opinions and concerns. Provide feedback to families. If you say you are going to follow up, do so and let them know what you found out. Learn from family members to care for residents as they know them. Encourage families and friends to feel welcome and at home when visiting. You could offer a cup of coffee or a glass of water. Invite family and friends to visit anytime, eliminating visiting hours for residents' family members. Give family information on how to access the building at times when the doors may be locked. Provide access to beverages and comfortable places to sit. Provide family members with ideas of activities to do with the residents when visiting, especially for family members of residents with dementia who may not be able to express their needs in words. Examples would be helping them to decorate their room, bring in the family pet for a visit, share family photo albums, share stories, or join them for coffee in the dining room. Invite family members to activities the resident enjoys and would enjoy having family members at. Invite family members to witness and provide care as they and the resident desire and in accord with the resident's wishes. Ask for suggestions from residents and families about activities that they would like to attend in the community and follow up on their suggestions and provide transportation. Examples would be trips to see the changing colors of the leaves, a shopping trip, a religious service, a community event, or a local play. Ask for suggestions from residents and families about community members or groups they would like to invite to the nursing home and follow up on their suggestions. Examples would be local, social, religious, business, and other special interest groups, so that residents can participate and be informed about community news, activities, and events. Now, I do want to spend some time talking about communication, because one of the most important and challenging parts of engaging residents and their family members is communication about health concerns, care plans, and the next steps in their care. These can be difficult conversation, but it is important to take every opportunity to engage the resident and family members by providing timely, accurate information, ensuring that the resident and family member understand the language you are using, and allowing plenty of time to ask questions. So let's watch this video to see a demonstration of staff responding to the concerns of a family member. And all of us who have worked in long-term care facilities know that we have faced circumstances very similar to the following.
Lisa, do you have a minute? I need to speak with you about Miss Matthews in room 355. Her daughter is really upset.
Really? Mrs. Matthews' daughter, Kathy, is always so friendly to everyone. What's the problem?
She was almost crying. She's worried about her mother's incontinence and the smell in her room when she arrived for her visit today. She asked if her mother could have a urinary catheter. I told her I'd talk to you about it.
Well, we don't put catheters in residents unless we have a valid medical reason, and urinary incontinence isn't one of them. I'll be down in just a minute to talk with her.
Okay.
So clear communication is vital when enhancing resident and family-centered care. Effective communication begins with listening to the resident and family. Listening to the resident and family can be demonstrated by using open-ended questions, acting on what the resident and family say, helping residents articulate concerns, getting a translator if needed to support the communication, and sharing resident preferences with everyone on the care team. So we're going to watch another video to see a demonstration of staff addressing family concerns and including these concerns in the resident's care plan.
Hi, Miss Matthews. I'm Lisa Cranford, one of the nurses who cares for your mother.
Yes, I remember you.
It's good to see you again. Alexa mentioned that you had some concerns. Why don't we step over here while your mother's resting?
When I first walked into her room, it smelled terrible. It just makes me so upset.
I completely understand. We've cleaned your mother and she no longer has an odor.
I don't want this to happen again. With her dementia, she doesn't remember to use the toilet. I want you to put in a catheter.
Well, Miss Matthews, we don't use catheters unless they're medically necessary, and urinary incontinence alone doesn't fit the criteria.
What do you mean not medically necessary? She's wetting herself.
I can understand that you're upset, and you're raising an important concern. How about if we work together with our nurse manager, Barry Woodman, on this? We can all sit down and discuss what to do together. How does that sound?
That sounds good. I like the services this nursing home provides, but this is just so upsetting. Mother would be so embarrassed if she could understand what was happening.
Let me contact Barry and see when he's available to meet with us, okay?
And finally, we're going to watch a video of the resident's daughter, the CNA, the nurse, and nurse manager as they have a conversation about the care plan and next steps. Watch this demonstration of how staff engage family in explaining care plans.
Thank you for coming back to meet with us, Kathy. This is our nurse manager, Barry Woodman. I believe you've met before?
We have. Good morning, Ms. Matthews.
Good morning.
Ms. Matthews, can you tell Barry about your concerns with your mother?
Sure. My mother took a lot of pride in her appearance. If you'd known her before, she wouldn't have wanted to smell like this. And it can't be good for her. I didn't think that this was the kind of place that let people sit in their own pee.
And we're not, Miss Matthews. And I apologize that your mother wasn't cleaned up more quickly. I also want to let you know that the first thing I did after we spoke was to talk to the doctor to see if there was a medical reason for her incontinence. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to prevent it.
So why can't she have a catheter? My friend's mother, who's at a different nursing home, has one.
Well, catheters are very useful when they're medically necessary. For example, I know that your mother had a catheter last year when she was admitted to the hospital due to her condition. It's not a good idea to leave them in for a long period of time.
Why not? She needs one all the time.
Well, Miss Matthews, if we were to leave a catheter in your mother, she'd most likely get a urinary tract infection.
Infection? That would not be good, especially at her age. But aren't there antibiotics to treat infections?
Yes, but antibiotics have drawbacks. They kill both good and bad bacteria, which would make your mother susceptible to other infections that could give her symptoms like diarrhea.
Oh, that would be awful.
And there's also the danger of the bacteria becoming resistant to the antibiotics if they're taken when they're not necessary, which make infections harder to cure. We just don't like to use antibiotics if they're not necessary. And there's other problems with catheters. If your mother had a catheter in, it would be harder for her to move around, or she could pull on it, and that could be very painful, or it could cause her to trip and fall, and, well, we certainly don't want that to happen.
I appreciate that you're trying to keep my mother safe. But I can't sit here and tell you that I'm okay with her smelling the way she did. I mean, her whole room smelled terrible.
I agree, it did smell in her room.
Well, maybe we can try a more absorbent adult diaper, one that's going to ensure less leaking.
But I still want her changed whenever she's wet. I don't want her to go so long between changes.
Yes, you're absolutely right. We will change the schedule so she's checked more frequently. And I can see that you're still not comfortable. There's something else we can try.
What's that?
We can try and get your mother set up on a toileting schedule. We'll start by observing the times of day that she generally needs to go, and then we'll set up a schedule based on her routines.
But she doesn't always speak up when she needs to go. How will you know when she needs to go to the bathroom?
People can get used to going to the bathroom at certain times of the day. The nursing assistants will take your mother to the bathroom when she's used to going, and then it becomes a habit. Many of our residents, like your mom, have memory issues, but we've been successful at creating a toileting schedule that works for each of them.
Okay, but here's my concern. I trust that Lisa and Alexa will keep to the schedule, but they're not always here, and neither am I. What then?
Well, we appreciate your trust in them, and they're great members of our staff. But here's how it'll work. We'll write your mother's toileting schedule into her care plan. Every staff member who oversees her care will refer to that plan. They'll know when to take her to the toilet.
And Ms. Matthews, we have meetings during shift changes to ensure oncoming staff are aware of any changes in a resident's care plan.
Ms. Matthews, why don't we give it a try? We'll schedule a meeting in a few weeks so we can check back and make sure that your mother's new health care plan is working.
That sounds good. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Care of residents can always be improved. In addition to communicating about care plans, residents and family members should be aware of any changes that may be implemented in the facility, such as changes to policies, schedules, or the implementation of safety programs that might affect the care the resident is receiving. Residents and family members should receive information concerning why these changes are being made and how these changes can impact staff, the resident, and the family. It is also important to share that change can be difficult and that all improvements include some change. So let's watch the video to see how this facility learned from an interaction with a family member who had a concern.
Well, last week we learned about debriefs at our team steps training. Let's talk about how that conversation went. What do you think went well?
Ms. Matthews was comfortable enough to speak up. She shared her concerns with all of us.
I agree, Alexa, and thanks for bringing Ms. Matthews' concerns to me. If we weren't all working together to solve this issue, it could have caused her to become frustrated with everyone caring for her mother.
Lisa's right. Alexa, thanks for bringing Ms. Matthews' concerns forward. So, any other thoughts on what went well?
I thought we made her feel welcome and like a member of the team caring for her mom. And I thought you set a good tone for the meeting, Barry.
Well, thanks, Lisa. I agree. It felt like a comfortable conversation. So, what did we learn?
I learned a lot about Ms. Matthews' concerns related to her mom's sense of dignity.
I think that we also learned when we explain things clearly, people understand why we do what we do. Once we explain the risks associated with using catheters or possibly using antibiotics, Ms. Matthews actually agreed that those were things we all wanted to avoid.
I think Ms. Matthews thought a catheter would be an easy answer, but it sure can create a lot of potential problems.
So what can we do differently next time to make conversations with residents' family members even better?
I think that Ms. Matthews was pretty brave to come by herself and talk with us. We should have mentioned that she could bring somebody with her. I think that we should offer families the option of bringing more than one family member to join these types of discussions.
I think it'd be great to include the resident, at least for part of the meeting, to find out what she prefers.
That's a great idea, Alexa, although it depends on the cognitive function of the resident. I think we had a productive discussion with Ms. Matthews today. But we also need to be thinking about preventing resident issues that cause family distress in the future.
I think there are other residents who have the same problem Mrs. Matthews does.
I agree. How about I work with the nurses to identify other residents who could benefit from a toileting schedule?
That sounds like a plan. Let's talk about it at our joint staff meeting next week. Yeah, thank you, both of you.